Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The crackdown on America's civil liberties is coming. We told you that yesterday. Turns out it didn't take long. It is here now, and it's unprecedented, and it will have consequences. This will cause extremism. Actions taken to suppress extremism will cause it. Are those unintended consequences? We don't know. It's very clear what's happening and what will happen. Here's the first news. Just days after Donald Trump called for breaking up the big tech monopolies in order to preserve democracy, the big tech monopolies have silenced him. Twitter has just announced that the sitting president has been banned permanently from the platform that is his primary means of public communication. Of course, they waited until the Democratic Party took power and they shut it down. They are in control now. Silicon Valley oligarchs are more powerful than the President of the United States, and they want you to know it. Everywhere the assault on speech accelerates. Glenn Greenwald is an independent journalist, co-founder of The Intercept, now found on Substack. We're happy to have him on tonight. You are a long-standing civil libertarian. Glenn, thanks for joining us. Please assess what you're seeing now in the United States.
Well, one thing I think that we're clearly seeing is the initiation of a new war on terror, which I don't say lightly. I say that because the Biden administration, what will be the Biden administration in about a week, is saying explicitly that they want, first of all, a new law to further criminalize domestic terrorism, even though every act that constitutes domestic terrorism is already criminalized. What they want to do is increase their power to monitor political groups, to infiltrate them, to criminalize activities that currently are not criminalized, nor should they be, whether it be advocacy of speech or other things. They're saying they want a new law, similar to the way that the 9/11 attack and the emotions surrounding it was instantly seized upon to institute a whole series of new laws that endure to this very day. Secondly, they are explicitly saying that they believe that domestic terrorism, so this war on terror, is not going to be directed at foreign non-state actors or terrorist groups or foreign countries like China or Iran or Russia. It's going to be directed inward, is the greatest threat to national security. And we've talked about this before, that this is what they're likely going to do because they have been focused for so long. Media outlets have, the Democratic Party has, on Donald Trump, and increasing fear levels about him. That's been the key to their profits and their power. What will happen once he's gone? The strategy has always been clear: to inflate the risk of what they call white supremacist terrorism, which increasingly means nothing more than being a Trump supporter, and then treating people in the United States who fall into that category the way you treat terrorists. You monitor them, you surveil them, you restrain them, you detain them. And this is what they're saying explicitly. And the Silicon Valley component of this is particularly menacing, Tucker, because these companies have greater power than any corporations in the history of the world. Not just wealth, but the amount of data that they have on us, and now the control that they exercise over our political discourse. A tiny handful of tech oligarchs are more powerful than any nation state. They determine what we can hear, what we can speak, what is true and what is false, with zero accountability and zero transparency. They overwhelmingly donated to the Democratic Party and support the Democratic Party, are part of that coalition. And Jennifer Palmieri, a top-level, long-term advisor to the Clintons, boasted on Twitter that the reason that Facebook and Silicon Valley are now censoring the enemies of the Democratic Party is because they know the Democrats are now in control of the key committees and have to do their bidding in order to get what they want. But the reality is they're the ones who wield power, Silicon Valley does, and the rest of us are subject to their undemocratic and unaccountable whims.
You've been saying this for 20 years, and almost 20 years ago you said laws like this will be used against American citizens. And I want to confess, I thought you sounded paranoid at the time, but you were right, and I want to acknowledge that now. You were right, and we should be really, really concerned. Glenn Greenwald, I know we'll be talking to you a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
So this is coming from everywhere all of a sudden, and we're going to unpack what we know at this hour. But we do know that over the last 24 hours, Twitter specifically has banned a number of different conservative accounts, not just the president.
These declassified documents reveal the
Chinese Communist Party, the Ayatollah of Iran, still have their accounts because they're not a threat to the ruling party here. Tonight, a competing social media service, Parler, which we told you about, is seeing massive and unprecedented surge in traffic. The site even experienced server outage because of new users tonight. Why? A couple of reasons. Mostly this. Parler is a free speech alternative to Twitter. They don't censor you. You can say what you want. The president is on Parler, and that has drawn a lot of people who realize they are being suppressed by Twitter. Parler's succeeding. What happens now? Of course, Silicon Valley is trying to kill it. Google has just removed Parler without any warning from its App Store. Apple and Amazon, which provide services that keep services like Parler online, have also threatened to shut Parler down. Amy Peikoff is the chief policy advisor at Parler, and she joins us today. Amy, thanks so much for coming on. This seemed to come out of nowhere. How big a threat to your company is this?
I mean, this is very huge because Apple in particular carries our app on the App Store, and as far as I know, technically there's no other way to deliver it. So if they choose to withdraw their services and hosting us on their store, we're toast. Amazon is also raising some problems, and I'm not sure how serious that is yet because I've yet to speak with them. I will later today. And they provide server for us, and if they were to remove their services, then we'd be down. As it is, we're having some difficulties now with the uptick in traffic, but if they took their service away, we'd be gone.
But
yes,
it's Parler.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
But it's Parler that is being singled out. I mean, it's kind of impossible not to conclude this is political repression.
It really, because I think we do have the reputation as being the conservative platform, although we are nonpartisan. That is what everybody sees us as. We do see this as being politically singled out. The other thing is that we are competing with other platforms who have decided that they want to surveil the people on their platform 24/7 without any particularized suspicion. And, on the one hand, people don't like to live in the world of Orwell's 1984. And then on the other hand, a lot of people seem to want to pressure social media to do more to moderate, as they call it, content on their platforms. But that would require 24-hour surveillance. And we don't think that that is consistent with the principles of America.
So just to be clear for our viewers who aren't familiar with your company and your app,
sure.
You're just trying to provide a place for people to say what they think. You're not trying to put Amazon out of business or dethrone Apple or force anybody else's carrier to drop their service. You just want to be left alone and do your thing. Am I mischaracterizing that?
Yes. I mean, we would just like to provide a place where people can come and they can speak freely, that they're not going to be fact-checked, they're not going to be told what to think, what they can read, etc. And also, we do not data pillage. We don't data mine them. We don't turn them into commodities and try to monetize them. And so we would just like to provide that service. And of course, like everybody else, we were horrified by a lot of the incitement that was going on this week. And we are doing everything that we can within our principles to, deal appropriately with that content. And we work with law enforcement as well. But that content has been everywhere this week. This has been a very unusual week, and to be singled out, we think, is quite unfair.
Well, I mean, it's political repression, period. Now,
Definitely.
Google, when we asked why they did this, and they sent a relatively long statement, we're just going to read a snippet of it to you on the air. We're aware of continued posting in the Parler app that seeks to incite ongoing violence in the U.S. It continues. In light of this ongoing and urgent public safety threat, we're suspending the app's listings from the Play Store until it addresses these issues. Okay, so they're accusing.
According to studies, there's one food that raises testosterone by 52% and 78%.
You of inciting violence.
They are putting on us the responsibility for every piece of incitement that is posted there. And the nature of an open platform, a free and open town square, is that we do not take action on people until we are aware of a situation. Right. It's particularized suspicion. You do
so
not
let me just ask you really
surveil.
quick. I mean, how much of the world's kiddie porn goes through Gmail? How many Gmail accounts have been used to order plastic explosives? How many insurrections have been planned on Google? Like a lot. And so, right? I mean, this is a completely arbitrary standard applied to you because they don't like the politics of the people who use your site.
I mean, that it's looking that way. I'm hoping it's not that way, but it's looking that way, and it's coming in sooner than I would have expected it.
Yeah. Well, it's all happening at once. This Friday night, It's happening all this Friday night. We're going to look back on this night. Amy Peikoff, appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you, Tucker.
So as we said, Twitter has permanently suspended the president from its app. The question is, how far will this go, and what will its effects be? Craig Dillon is a former advisor to the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He ran Johnson's social media accounts. He joins us tonight. Craig, where do you think this is headed from here?
Well, I think they've set themselves a dangerous precedent. The question is, who do they ban next? Are the Chinese accounts coming down? The supreme leader of Iran regularly tweets. You've got the Venezuelan leader. He's using Twitter all the time. So where does this stop? Are they going to ban all of these people, or is it just particular ones that they don't like?
So in this country, and I'm sure it's similar in the UK, these platforms are our public square. This is how people sort out their political differences, how they learn about politics, and many other things. So when you shut these down, you are isolating people. It seems to me you are ensuring the rise of real extremism in this country. I mean, it's obvious. Censorship makes people paranoid and crazy and frustrated and angry and sometimes violent. They must know that. Why are they doing this?
Well, they're seeing unbelievable amounts of pressure from various people in their side of society to ban him and do all of these sorts of things. It's an interesting decision for them to make. I imagine they took a lot of debating over it. But as you say, this is going to push people onto, as we've already heard, places like Parler and things like that. So it's basically just segregated the people now. The only people that are going to be using Twitter are going to tend to be left-leaning people, whereas right-leaning people are going to go onto Parler and places like that. It's just made both sides are going to be an echo chamber, and it's not good for democracy. No,
and it's an attack on people, and they feel under siege. We're turning up the temperature too high. These companies are doing that, I think. Craig, it's great to see you. Thank you. So what's interesting, given that CNN calls itself a news network, a journalistic enterprise, is that CNN has not only joined in, but in fact has been at the forefront of the efforts to squelch opposition to their worldview, to censor anything they don't like. And of course, at the center of their obsession is this show.
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson.
So we're flattered, obviously, and why wouldn't you be when Don Lemon pronounces your name correctly? But there's something darker afoot here, and that is that CNN is working, explicitly saying they are, to take Fox News off the air, just as the president's Twitter account was deleted. To take Fox News off the air. They think they can do it. We'll tell you how after the break. This morning, CNN announced that it is working to force the fair and run this company out of business. A number of prominent Democrats, including office holders, support that effort. CNN staffers have already contacted the 6 major cable carriers in this country. Those are the companies that carry our signal into your home, and pressured them to drop Fox News. Why? On the pretext that this show is directly responsible for and others on the channel are directly responsible for the violence at the U.S. Capitol this week. It is time, CNN announced, quote, that TV carriers face questions for lending their platforms to dishonest companies that profit off of disinformation and conspiracy theories. So here you have a news company calling for censorship. You have a TV network demanding that media conglomerates ban its competitors. That's terrifying. But it's also, if we're being completely honest here, kind of amusing. Because you can just imagine CNN's blustery little dwarf king calling into his morning staff call yesterday. He spent a long night sitting on the tiny throne in his apartment, feet dangling just above the floor, watching the minions jolt to attention. The first to her battle post is a former homecoming queen from Orange County who is eager to prove her chops. She's not a primetime anchor. She'd like to be, but she's still just a newsreader, a former co-host of a radio show on a contemporary hit station in Yakima, Washington, called Billy Blue and Brianna 2, The Morning Zoo. Not everyone takes her seriously. She wants to be taken seriously, and this is her chance. So she tries to remember the Dwarf King's orders. Stop Fox! That was the main command. Then there was that stream of consciousness part, the part where the boss was breathing so heavily it was hard to make out the words. There was white supremacy, insurrection, domestic terrorism, something like that. She tries to connect the dots. It's confusing, but she's pretty sure the word insurrection was in there, for sure. Someone insurrected maybe, or acted insurrectingly, something like that. No, it was definitely insurrection. So she decides to look up the word in the dictionary to see what it means. Here's what happened next.
It was an insurrection. Take Merriam-Webster's word for it. Insurrection, an act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government. Not
Take Merriam-Webster's word for it. That's Mrs. Merriam-Webster to you. But here's the problem. This show, she explained, refused to call that obviously highly insurrection-y event an insurrection. We literally didn't use the word. Just refused. I mean, seriously. Who would do that? Well, if you really want to know who would do that, a white person would do that. A privileged white person. Someone who, presumably, unlike her co-workers at CNN, and in fact the Dwarf King himself, was both white and privileged, afflicted with something called white privilege. So much white privilege, in fact, that it blinded this person. Because that's the thing about white privilege. If you keep doing it, you go blind. That's what the boss said.
Tucker Carlson rolls his eyes at the idea of systemic racism, at white privilege, but perhaps he should roll those eyes on over to a mirror. It is entirely fantastical to think that crowds of black or brown Americans would have been treated as the mostly white insurrectionists at the Capitol were on Wednesday.
Oh, the moral lecture from the morning zoo lady. Perhaps he should roll his eyes on over to a mirror. Assuming you can even do that when you've been blinded by white privilege, because blind people can't see themselves, right? But maybe they should see themselves. They might stop insurrecting, stop being so white and privileged. It went on like this for an entire segment. You can look it up on the internet. And in a way, that's the good news. With enemies like this, Fox News will be around for a long, long time.
Next time you see this plant in your backyard, don't cut it down, because this is the best natural painkiller you'll ever find. Some people even...
Jason Whitlock is a longtime journalist, runs Outkick. We're happy to have him on tonight. Jason, thanks for coming on. So the question I have is, have you ever seen, and you've been in competitive journalism, you're in sports journalism, but you've competed against other news outlets your whole life. Have you ever seen an attempt by one to get the authorities to take the other one offline, to silence it?
Tucker, we're living in the craziest time of our lifetime, and maybe other than the Civil War, the craziest time in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
And nothing surprises me. It really doesn't. And what CNN is trying to do speaks to the level of fear and clearly the level of disruption that President Trump has caused or potentially could cause. They're just trying to silence any and everyone who doesn't demonize this guy and compare him to Adolf Hitler and the worst people in the world.
What happens when you try and do that? And can you do it? I mean, I don't think I know anyone who's thought more about social media and its effects on the country than you have. Can you really silence people? And if you try, what comes next?
Well, I certainly think you can, and they're doing it and have been pretty successful at doing this for a long time. They have amplified the voices that they agree with, and they have diminished the voices they disagree with. They have crucified Trump supporters. And I just want people to think about this. And listen, I don't agree with the way President Trump has handled himself in all situations. But he has picked on other elites. He has gone after the U.S. President, Barack Obama. He has gone after the mainstream media. He's gone after celebrities. The media and the elites have gone after working class people. Trump supporters are not elites. They don't have major platforms. They are the people. There is an attack on the people. Whether you agree or disagree with them, you cannot demonize 74 million Americans and say all of their complaints are racist or sexist or they're Nazis. You're baiting America for a civil war.
That's exactly right, and that is the distinction. And I do think I don't know if you're overstating it. I mean, this is going to cause extremism, like dangerous extremism. I'm very worried about it. But your point, I think, is the key one. They're punching down. Trump is punching laterally or up, and there's a huge difference between those two things.
Listen, in 1620, 400 years ago, people fled England, because they wanted freedom of expression, freedom of religion. And here we are 400 years later, and we're stripping freedom of religion, freedom of expression. We're silencing people we disagree with. This is un-American, and it's crystal clear. We need some real leadership in this country if President-elect Joe Biden wants to step out here and offer up some real unity and peace. Make peace with Trump supporters. Treat them like human beings, even if you disagree with them.
Right.
That's the American thing to do.
Treat them like human beings, even if you disagree with them. Amen. Jason Whitlock, thank you for that. Great to see you. So we don't want to suggest that it's just the president who's being silenced or just Fox News that's under attack. They're trying to destroy everyone who doesn't agree with them. Amazing. We'll have more on that throughout the show. But we want to take a break from the sadness and bring you a hopeful, happy story.
Hey, I don't know if you heard, but we just had a big development in the unfolding spike.
And it comes from our friend Dave Portnoy, who has carved out his own space to help people. And he's done it. And we'll tell you how he did it after the break. Okay, so as we've been telling you, the president has been permanently banned, his account deleted from Twitter, but he just sent this from his POTUS account. Roll that back a little bit so I can read it if you don't, other direction. This is what the president has just sent out on the permanent President of the United States account on Twitter. Quote, as I've been saying for a long time, Twitter has gone further and further in banning free speech, and tonight Twitter employees have coordinated with the Democrats and the radical left in removing my account from their platform to silence me. And you, the 75 million great, also look at the possibilities of building out our own platform in the near future. We will not be silenced. Twitter's not about free speech. They're all about promoting a radical left platform where some of the most vicious people in the world are allowed to speak freely. Stay tuned. As we read this all happening in real time, as you can see, Twitter took that down as we read it. There's never been a night like this in my lifetime. So there's a lot of chaos going on, and we wanted to take a break in the middle of it to tell you something happy. Dave Portnoy, as a day job, runs Barstool Sports. He's watched the country get poorer. He wanted to help. He's now raised tens of millions of dollars to help small businesses stay alive during these lockdowns. One of these small business owners recently spoke to him by phone to explain what that money meant to her. Listen. So the rest of us are arguing about how big the checks could be, should be, and Portnoy just decides, I'm going to do it myself, and raises the money and gives it to the people who need it. It's kind of an amazing story. You'd think it would be everywhere. It isn't. It's been pretty much ignored, the Barstool Sports Fund, by the media. But this week, some in the press started taking a different approach. They're angry, and they're trying to destroy Barstool Sports. The San Francisco Chronicle, for example, is a garbage paper, wrote that the woman you just saw was, quote, not aware of Portnoy's history of making racist and misogynistic remarks or the accusations of sexual harassment against him. Because no good deed goes unpunished, apparently. Dave Portnoy joins us tonight. First of all, Dave, you did it. I knew that you would. I think it's a really moving story. It's a great story. Why aren't more people celebrating it?
We're starting to pick up steam, but who knows? There's agendas. It's sad. I mean, obviously, I come on this show, so you get painted with a certain brush, which I'm sure you're aware. We're just trying to help people. We're just trying to help people. And I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, left, right, green, yellow, black, white. There's people, and they need money, and these videos that we're doing show it. And I'll go anywhere. Tucker, you invite me, you help launch it, but I will literally go anywhere. To the credit, Today Show did a very nice piece on it, helped us.
Good.
So, this is one of those issues that I'm glad we're helping, but the fact that anybody can't be, there should be nobody who has, anything against it. This is just people helping people in the truest sense. And we are getting it. It's $20 million. We're close to 21 million. We've had people reach out. But why, and Fox has been great promoting it. They have. But everybody should. Because the more publicity we get, the more small businesses we can help. And it spans everywhere. So I don't have that answer. I'm just focused. Get publicity, get money, get it to the people who need it.
Now, you guys are really successful. I don't think you're quite as big as Blackstone or Goldman Sachs. I won't make you answer, but I mean, where are their funds, by the way? Seriously, the people who are getting, where's Jeff Bezos' fund? A sincere question, what the hell? Why is this left to you to do? You run a sports site. What is this?
I have no idea. I will say, and we're just getting ready to tweet it, I'm happy to say.
cardio burns fat, right?
Is going to help us. So
Good.
I think that will go a long way. But I don't know. Maybe they don't know about it. I don't know what they do. Listen, that's almost in a weird way the charm of what we're doing is just everyday people across every walk of life reaching out unsolicited, saying, "Can I give you $50? Can I give you $100,000?" They just want to help, and it is the beauty of this country. There's so much chaos. I don't want to get it bad, but there's a lot of good. This country is still great.
That's right.
And there's people who want to help.
That's exactly right, and that's why I was excited to talk to you tonight. What kind of people have you been giving the money to?
It's all walks. We literally get all walks of life, but small business, restaurants, bar owners, dry cleaners, you name it, it's touched. And not surprisingly, the states that have the strictest lockdowns are California, New York, Massachusetts, a lot of applicants from those states. But these are people who have been in business. That first woman, that's the oldest bar west of the Mississippi in San Francisco. It's been around since 1830. It's their life brand. They put everything into to lose a bar like that and have nobody pay attention. That's why these people are breaking down. It's for the first time in like final years. It's sad. It's sad.
It's just crushing. And you are making a difference. I never say that because it sounds so dopey, but actually you are. And I'm grateful I know they are too. Dave Portnoy, thank you.
Thanks.
So your civil rights are disappearing. Again, that's not cable news hype. It's actually happening. We spent the last 40 minutes telling you how. Just yesterday, when no one was looking, Joe Biden nominated someone to the Justice Department who will change the way that civil rights law is enforced in this country. We'll tell you who she is and what's likely to happen when she takes the job. We'll be right back. Civil rights apply to everyone. That's the definition. A civil right is universal. When civil rights apply only to some people, whether it's the people with the right politics or gender or skin color, they're not civil rights. They're meaningless, actually. Many Democrats no longer believe that, though. The insurrection talk, all a pretext to change the definition of the term civil rights. In less than 2 weeks, Democrats will have complete control of the federal government. Joe Biden will be the president. Where does he stand on civil rights? We got some clarity on that question this week. You probably missed it during all of the overheated coverage of the last 24 hours. But Joe Biden has appointed a woman called Kristen Clark to run the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. Now, you may not have heard that name. You'll hear it soon. We'll sum it up this way. Appointing Kristen Clark to head the Civil Rights Division is like hiring Beto O'Rourke to lead the NRA. Kristen Clark doesn't believe in civil rights. She believes in identity politics. In March 2018, we interviewed her, and she admitted that on the air. Watch.
We want people who are qualified and experienced, especially at the helm of our nation's most important federal agencies. But we also need to make sure that those agencies reflect the growing diversity of our country. And I'm not just talking about racial diversity. I'm talking about gender diversity and ethnic diversity. And at every turn with this administration, we've seen efforts to turn the clock back.
Do you think that airlines should apply the same diversity rules you're calling for here? That they shouldn't take the people who score the highest on the pilot tests, but that they should hire also on appearance, the way people look?
Every workplace, whether you're talking about airlines or federal agencies, should hire the best, but should place a premium on diversity. And
but which is more important, the way that you look or what you do, what you're capable of doing? So like when you're flying a plane, how important is it what you look like, your appearance?
Incredibly important, and it's also important that we have. It's also important that we place a premium on diversity, and the fact that we have people.
This is an urgent message for U.S. citizens. Did you know over 12 million...
It means what you look like.
No,
You're talking about the shallowest possible criterion. It's literally your shade. That's what you're saying. If you mean like diversity of skills, I'm totally with you. But when you were little, did you ever think you'd be arguing to judge people primarily on how they look?
You know, I'm talking about gender diversity. I'm talking about racial diversity, Tucker.
Okay,
89% of President Trump's judicial nominees have been white male. But
are they bad?
White male. Many of them are horrible.
You're speaking a foreign language to me. Oh, they're bad because of their skin color. You really would have to have gone to Choate and Harvard to have ideas like that. Of course, she did. quite an impressed person. Choate in Harvard. So she cares about racial diversity. In fact, she cares about it so much she wants to penalize Asian and white applicants in college admissions. We're not making that up. This is civil rights, according to Kristen Clark. If you have the wrong skin color, you don't get into college. She will end the DOJ's lawsuit against Yale University over its openly racist admissions practices if you are Asian or white, maybe South Asian too. Your civil rights are not as important to the head of the DOJ's new Civil Rights Division. If that sounds a little backward to you, you should know that Kristen Clark is not stopping there. She also thinks identification cards are racist, but only in certain situations. So if you buy a gun, of course you have to show an ID. That's not racist. But if you want to vote, you shouldn't be allowed be forced to show ID because that's racist. In September of 2017, she explained the reasoning behind this on this show. Are there really millions of people who don't have photo ID? And you know the answer is no, there aren't, because there can't be.
There are 600,000 people who don't have a conceal and carry permit or passport
people have a driver's license or a passport, or else they can't live in this country. So here's my question. Is it racist to require a photo ID to get a job or stay in a hotel or buy a gun or fly on a plane?
No.
So why is it racist to ask when you vote?
The right to vote is the most important right in our democracy. And we don't need to erect hurdles and barriers that make it harder for ordinary Americans to vote.
Peter Kirsanow is commissioner on the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. He joins us tonight. Peter Kirsanow, thanks so much for coming on. It doesn't sound like she believes in the most basic principle in the country, which is we're all created with equal value. It doesn't sound like she believes that to me.
Yeah, well, you know, if you review the testimony that she presented to the Civil Rights Commission during our hate crimes briefing, it suggests that she proposes a reversion to Obama-era policies that posit that virtually every racial disparity in the country is a result of systemic racism or structural racism. And that leads to certain conclusions. And one of them is, and she testified in the hate crimes briefing, is a focus on hate crimes. And if you look at, this is beyond mere Kristen Clark, if you look at the left in the Civil Rights Division and the direction in which they were going under Obama, there's an expansion of hate crimes, a stress on hate crimes that could expand it to speech, for example, that goes beyond Brandenburg versus Ohio. It's an incitement to say certain things or certain words or express certain concepts. And you may have prosecutions on hate crimes with respect to things you say the wrong way. You know, Trump supporters saying things the wrong way. There may be some hate crime prosecutions there. I'm sure some would like to do that. But take a look at what hate crimes do. Hate crimes, you know, we had a hearing on this where, you know, in 2015, for example, 1.2 million violent crimes in the United States, murders, rapes, robberies, things of that nature. 821 were hate crimes. In other words, 0.067%. You're statistically as likely to be hit by lightning as you are to be the victim of a violent hate crime. But more than that, everything is going to be focused on identity. One of the things that's troubling has to do with crime, and that is.
So if you're trying to crank up your metabolism so that you can see faster results, there's one cooking spice that I beg you to add to your meals starting today.
Is that I suspect that we're going to have more consent decrees binding the police departments in the fashion that was like Chicago and other police departments that were subject to consent decrees. What happens then? A magnified Ferguson effect, skyrocketing crime rates. Same with respect to prosecution of individual police officers. Cash bail provisions are going to be attacked so that people are going to be out on bail or will never appear basically for their sentencing. More crime as a result of that. As you just indicated, more likely than not, they will drop all of the lawsuits.